Imploding Gay Power. Gay power has made stunning advances in recent years due to a well-orchestrated falsehood, the claim that gays are born that way. If this falsehood can be exposed and countered, gay power will crash. Many people believe that gays are born that way, that there's an organic basis for homosexuality. Most who believe this way would not deny gays equal rights, including the right to marry, simply because of an accident of birth. Such people support gay objectives out of compassion, a compassion that too often overrides their own theological beliefs. The more we fight their compassionate response, the more determined they are to support the supposedly marginalized gay community. For many who are reluctant to resist intimidating gay power, accepting the born gay belief can be inviting. If they can be made to believe it, if they can accept it themselves, they are able to view their lack of opposition to the gay objectives as compassion rather than cowardice. Even ambivalence over whether people are born gay can cripple a person's resistance to the gay political agenda. While dispelling the myth of born gay may seem like a daunting task, it is instead surprisingly easy. You have only to do two things. First is to discredit born gay studies. Various studies have been conducted to prove an organic basis for homosexuality. Rather than examining them individually, these studies can all be effectively and summarily discredited. Number two, show that the born gay thesis is a ridiculous idea. Without the support of born gay studies, this thesis, without the support of these born gay studies, this thesis almost collapses by itself. For the first part, look at the increasingly common problem. After 22 years of marriage, Fred dumps his wife Sue to go off with Mike, his new lover. It is a cardinal rule of gay ideology that Fred did not convert to homosexuality. Rather, he was always gay, but just now came out. With this emerging problem, you would think that someone getting married would want to run tests to ensure that she or he is really marrying someone of the stated orientation. But it doesn't work that way. A person can always act straight and swear on a stack of phone books that he or she is straight, but that's not conclusive proof. Likewise, a person can act and claim to be gay, but later events can show that they were just confused and weren't gay at all. A person's intrinsic sexual orientation, apparently, is determined by what a person eventually declares him or herself to be. This leads to an interesting question. What percentage of the population dies before finally acting on their true orientation? Obviously some, but under this perspective, it is entirely possible everybody is gay, but most die before coming out. It's also possible that everyone is really straight, and those who assert to be gay are only confused. So while some assert that homosexuality is an inherent unchangeable characteristic, it follows that it is impossible to say who has it. Nothing can be presented that is conclusive proof. This problem torpedoes all research supporting an organic basis for homosexuality. If a man can't tell that his wife and sexual partner of 22 years is a lesbian, how can a researcher tell a person's orientation after a 15-minute interview and perform valid studies on what caused it? Or to put it another way, pretend you're talking to a researcher who offers proof of an organic basis for homosexuality. You use some kind of criteria to determine who was and who was not gay in your study. Would your criteria say that Fred is now gay? Would the same criteria that you used say that he was straight before? Wouldn't the criteria of your study that proves homosexuality is an inherent unchangeable condition also prove that Fred converted from heterosexual to homosexual? With this internal inconsistency, you can declare all such studies mush. Without the protective covering of convincing gay studies, we work on the second point. Remember that the laws of evolution and of genetic succession are particularly harsh on any trait that prevents reproduction. So let's start with a simple formula that paints a stark picture. One gay man plus one gay man equals 0 gay children. Or you can look at the female side of the picture. You can go back maybe 10 generations and assume any fertility rates, that is the number of children for a woman, for lesbian and straight women, and calculate the outcome. Even a slight difference would cause a gay gene to rapidly fade from the population. On the other hand, if the fertility rates were the same, how could a woman be considered a lesbian if she was having the same amount of heterosexual sex to produce the same amount of children? Even if a tendency towards homosexuality was genetic, every time the gene expressed itself, it would fall out of the gene pool. Although there can be no genetic basis for homosexuality, other speculation about an organic basis persists. Perhaps it's caused by a chemical imbalance. Perhaps a different prenatal environment causes it. The problem with any of this speculation is that the gay community claims that 10% of the population is gay, some 30 million Americans. If this number of people had a biological condition that prevented reproduction, would not we be awash with studies trying to find a cause and possibly a cure? And why are gays not clamoring for such studies that supposedly would prove the cause of their homosexuality? In conclusion, having disproved an organic basis for homosexuality, it now follows that homosexuality is caused by personal choices, although they may be very heavily influenced by a person's environment and experiences. Homosexuality is not an inherent human characteristic, rather it is only a habit, regardless of how hard it may be to break. When this is clear to all, we can have a discussion on whether homosexuality is so much superior to heterosexuality that society should promote it as a viable and as vigorously as we are doing. After having this discussion for, say, 30 seconds, sympathy for homosexuality and the gay power dependent on it will collapse. Please note that this discussion is of a scientific question rather than of moral values. It is therefore most appropriate to debate this scientific question in public schools and other places where moral statements about the behavior of others may be viewed as bullying or hate speech. Thank you.